This is Nyamka with 5 tips to help you navigate having a difficult discussion. A difficult discussion can be anything that we need to communicate that is hard to communicate for whatever reason. It can be because of us, it can be because it's a touchy issue to communicate. It can be because of the other person, whoever the other person is, maybe a hard person to communicate with. But a difficult discussion simply means that it's something that is challenging to communicate for whatever reason. So tonight I'm going to share with you 5 tips for having a difficult discussion. If you've had any difficult discussions recently, go ahead and comment, share this with someone who you know is dreading a difficult discussion that they have coming up. And the discussion can be based on all sorts of different scenarios and different relationships, right? So a difficult discussion that you may need to have with your spouse is going to be different than a difficult discussion that you need to have on the job. So I started to say earlier, with your spouse, for example, you may be looking at finances. Finances are major when it comes to marriages. It said statistics have proven in the United States the number one reason why people divorce. Type it in if you know, let me know. The number one reason why people divorce in America. Go ahead and type it in. And we can talk about it because this needs discussion. I'll wait for that. But some of the other relationships that you may need to have a difficult discussion, it may be with your boss at work. You want to ask for more money. You need a raise, right? You've been working hard. You've gotten all these credentials and now you need more money. How do you have that conversation, right? Did anybody type in what's the number one reason for divorce in America? The number one reason for divorce in America is finances. That's the number one reason. So if you're married, if you're in a happy relationship, your spouse may stay with you even if you were to cheat. Sad to say, your spouse may stay with you. Statistics show that people are more empathetic to that. But the number one reason, finances, don't go bankrupt if you're married because chances are your relationship won't last. That's not to say that it can't. Statistics show that people divorce because of finances, first and foremost in America. So difficult discussions, you may need to discuss with your partner their spending habits and their credit score because it's important to the relationship. If you don't discuss that, it's something that can fester. It can get much worse. By the time you're ready to have the discussion, it may have more irreparable damage done to the relationship than if you've had the discussion early on. All right, some of the other things that may need discussing. Let me slow down. If you have children, talking about the birds and the bees, right? That's a discussion that for some is, very difficult to have. Talking about things that are uncomfortable could be difficult. Another reason for having a difficult discussion, misunderstandings. How many of you have had to clear up a misunderstanding? Someone misunderstood something that you did or something that you said, and then now you need to have this discussion to clear their air to make sure that they understand. So it depends on the relationships that you have. It also depends on the types of subject matters. I mentioned earlier, for example, if you are entering a new relationship, you're getting close with someone, you may want to discuss, or you should discuss, both of y'all's sexual health. That's something that's a little bit awkward, a little bit uncomfortable, but very necessary if you're trying to get close with someone, hoping that they will be honest, you'll be honest with them. So you often have these discussions to share information, to gather information, to clear up miscommunication, to ask for something. So difficult discussions are hard to have. Sometimes, you know what we do? We pretend like we don't even need them. Instead of saying, this is hard, I need to, be an adult about this and have this discussion, because it's so hard for many of us, what we do is we just say, what, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stay quiet. I'm going to wait for someone else to bring it up. I'm going to wait for the other person to bring it up. And it festers, it gets worse. And with time, it doesn't get any easier for you to have the discussion. So I will share with you 5 tips for having a difficult discussion. Tip number one, what is your purpose? You need to know the purpose for your discussion. Why are you having this discussion? Are you having it because you want to share information? Are you having it because you want to gather information? Are you having it because you want to clear up something, some sort of misunderstanding? Hey, Pat, how are you? Why do you need to have this difficult discussion? Do you need to get a raise at work? Was there something happening going on in the office that you need to, bring the team together and discuss something? What's your reason? What's your purpose? Make sure that it's for the right reason. Make sure that you're not being gossipy. Make sure that you're not being messy. Make sure that you're not minding people's business when you're trying to have this conversation. What is the purpose? Set your purpose clearly and set your intentions of what you hope to share, what you hope to communicate. Very important, because when your intentions are set and when you know what the purpose is, it makes it easier for you to stay focused and to stay on track during the discussion. So number one, what's your reason? Number two, and I have them all written down to make sure that I have them in good order and that I don't forget any. Number two, remove expectation. See, many of us feel that because we're going into a discussion and because we're the ones starting the discussion, we feel that we need to control it. We feel that we're going to go into this discussion and we're going to immediately get what we want from it. You're going to set your intentions in the first step and you're going to set your purpose, but you don't control the outcome of the discussion. You just don't. Why? Because the discussion involves someone else. Anytime someone else is involved, know that you cannot have total control. You have to open up and be vulnerable. You have to release that need for having total control when you're having a difficult discussion. You have to be open for that person to share with you, for that person to give their feedback, and so that you can have a discussion. It's a discussion. It is not a monologue. All right. So number one, set your purpose and your intentions. Number two, make sure that you're not going in with any preset expectations. All right. Now, what is healthy for you to do is to probably in your mind try to envision certain scenarios, and that's fine. If I say A, this person may say B, they may say C, D, E, F, G. They may think and say something that you never even thought of, or I never even thought of if I'm having a difficult discussion. So while we can look at different scenarios and different ways the conversation could turn, we also have to be open to knowing that it may take a totally different turn that we never even expected, and be open to that. All right. So set your purpose, your purpose and your intentions. Go in there with zero expectations of a particular outcome. Number three, use emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Be aware of your emotions. How are you feeling? Difficult discussions are usually difficult because many times we have emotions attached to difficult discussions. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was end-of-life care for our parents. How many of you have spoken to your parents about end-of-life care? Are you the person who's going to be responsible for your parents' finances, for their quality of life, for all these things as they age? Who's going to be responsible? Have you ever discussed it? The people in your life, your husband, your wife, your spouse, do they want do not resuscitate should they take in and they want to just die peacefully? Would they request or require or really like for them to be resuscitated if they were in an accident and had to be rushed into medical right away? And if they're resuscitated, if they're on life support, how long should they be on life support? I mean, these things are hard to have. There's some people who tell me that they can't have these discussions with their parents because their parents are thinking that, they're looking for money and they're looking for assets. Listen, it's important. So use these steps to help you have these discussions, your emotional intelligence. So you're not going into something and, overly emotional on either way. You're not going in bawling your eyes out because the person who you're speaking to is going to be more concerned about your emotions than what it is you're trying to say. Gauge your emotions before going in. Although I do know when you're having discussions, sometimes your emotions come out. That is really, something that you can't really control. But going into a situation, if it's a difficult discussion, you can't go in there angry and cussing and mad and upset. Because even if the discussion needs to be had, if you don't respect the person or if you are emotionally all over the place, again, your message is going to get lost, okay? So check your emotions, not only your emotions, the emotions of the other person. See, sometimes we're so concerned about ourselves that we forget about the other person. You know, you may say you want to have a difficult discussion with someone and you are prepared, but you go into that person or you approach that person and that person emotionally is all over the place. They may be dealing with something that you may not know of, but you can tell that they're not mentally ready. They're not emotionally ready to have this conversation. They may be busy. They may be doing something else, facing a challenge. Gauge your emotions, but also be aware of the other person's emotions when you're having these conversations, all right? Set your purpose. That's number one. Number two is know that you're going into this without any expectations for a particular outcome. Number three, emotions. Make sure that you gauge your emotions, you manage your emotions, and that you are aware of the other person's emotions before having that conversation. And then number four, have the discussion. Have the discussion. I know that I've walked so many people through the process of having a difficult discussion and then they never have it. They know what they want. They know what they want to say. Their emotions are in check. They are prepared for whatever outcome, but then they get so anxious and then there are butterflies in the stomach and then you never have the discussion. All difficult discussions need to be had. That's why we're going through this. Have the discussion. Whatever amount of courage it takes for you to have it, have the discussion. One of the things that I tell my coaching clients and that I'll share with you, if I'm having a difficult discussion with someone, I would call them. I would say, I need to have a discussion with you. I need to talk to you about something. Can you talk at this time? Or can we meet at this place? Because once it's already set, then it's easier for you to follow through with it, right? Because you already know that this person is expecting to meet with you at this time, so you're going to have the discussion. Do it. It's hard, but it has to be done. When you're having this discussion, make sure that you are allowing the other person to speak. This is not all about you. The whole reason you need somebody else in a discussion is because it's not all about you. Make sure that you are allowing the other person to speak, allowing the other person to express themselves. Make sure that you are not attacking the other person and that it's a discussion. It is not a monologue. So even if it's information that you're sharing from your point of view, you need to be able to gauge. Are you listening to me? Are you understanding me? Do you have anything that you would like to add to the discussion so whomever you're having this discussion with feels that they're an equal part and an equal contributor to the discussion? All right, so we are on number 4 now for the discussion. Have the discussion and make sure that it's a discussion both ways and that you have not totally hijacked the conversation. Let me see if there's anyone who had anything to add to the conversation. I see that I'm hearing some people say, hi, how are you guys? And we're going straight to number 5 then, if there are no questions. If you would like to share with me a difficult discussion that you've had recently, let me know how it worked for you and if some of these tips that I'm sharing today would have been helpful. We're going to tip number 5. When you've had a difficult discussion, honor what comes out of it. Honor what comes out of it. Too often we're so scared and we don't know what people are going to say. And oftentimes after we have these difficult discussions, we feel we're at peace. We're calm. We're so glad we had the discussion. Oftentimes, all the things that are keeping us back from having difficult discussions are in our heads. And after we're able to fully express ourselves, get the other person's opinions and feelings, afterwards, it's usually such a calming feeling to know that we were able to have this discussion. But it's important that whatever came out of the discussion, that you honor it. You respect it. If you went into the discussion talking about, let's say I use the example of finances with spouses, about finances, and you decide that you guys are going to set a budget as husband and wife, honor the budget. If you went into the discussion with your children about chores, whatever, honor it. Whatever comes out of the discussion, make sure to honor it. Why? Because your integrity depends on it. You've just had a difficult discussion, something that you dreaded doing, something that was hard for you to do. You did it. Congratulations. Now make sure to honor whatever came out of it so that you can continue to have the respect and the trust of the other person. Very important. So I'm just going to wrap up really quickly by going over my 5 tips for having a difficult discussion. Number 1, set your purpose. Know why you need to have the discussion, why it's important for you to have this discussion, why it's going to be important for the other persons. Okay? So make sure that you have your purpose of the discussion set. Number 2, remove expectations for a particular outcome. Do not go in expecting this or expecting that. Being open to hearing someone else's perspective and working things out mutually. Number 3, be aware of your emotions. Be aware of the other person's emotions. Do not allow your emotions or someone else's emotions to override the conversation or to actually take focus off of what you need to actually discuss. Number 4, have the discussion. Have the discussion and make sure that you're open. Make sure that you're having a two-way conversation, not a monologue. Make sure that you're respecting the other person's feelings and their contributions. And number 5, make sure that you honor whatever comes out of the discussion. Let me know if this has been helpful. When I work with clients, I give specific things dependent on their specific circumstance. These are 5 general tips that can be used overall for any difficult discussion that you may need to have. All right. Thank you all for joining. Dara says number 2 is probably very challenging for people. Remove expectations. That is so true, Dara. That is so true. And I think not only in difficult discussions, but number 2 is just challenging for us all the time. You know, as people, we know what we want. So we set up ourselves with certain expectations. We know whatever it is, whatever situation, a discussion, a job, a relationship, we know what we want. So we set up ourselves with this is what I want, this is what I envision, and this is how I expect it to go. And sometimes it happens that way, but oftentimes it doesn't. And oftentimes we are disappointed because we've set ourselves up with these expectations and it doesn't happen. When you're having a difficult discussion, just like anything else, you have to be open and you have to remove expectations. You know what your purpose is, but remove expectations so that you can have a mutually beneficial conversation. And then you can steer the conversation, but you have to be open to hearing someone else's perspective and being able to shift. When we're having difficult discussions, we have to be able to shift. We have to be able to maneuver. We have to be able to say, you know what? I see your perspective and what I was thinking doesn't make sense. Or what I was thinking is not going to work. So you know what? Let's try your way. You know what? Let's do things this way. You know what? None of us really have good ideas. Let's get a third person in here to join the conversation to hear us. So Dara, you're absolutely right. Number 2 is very challenging for all of us in many different situations, just because we're people who have expectations and we often put our expectations on others and we expect them to want the same things that we want and to do the same things that we want to do and to get the same results. All right. Well, I will be answering questions in the comment section. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, be sure to share them with me. Go ahead and share this video so that other people can use these tips, because guess what? We don't communicate enough. And I have realized that right now what we're doing in America is that there's so many difficult conversations that need to happen among families, among neighbors, in the workplace. And what we're doing is that we are holding everything inside. We are holding everything inside. We're refusing to have these conversations. It's keeping us up at night. It's affecting the way that we eat. It's affecting how we sleep. It's affecting how we interact with people. It's affecting us on a cellular level. You know why? Stress affects us on a cellular level. We feel stress, and stress weakens us and it sickens us. And one of the reasons is because we're not communicating. And we have to communicate not just when it's okay for either of us, is not just when we have something good to say. We have to communicate also when we have things to say that are challenging, when we have things to say that people may not want to hear, when we have things to say that would require other people to really dig deep inside to answer questions they may not want to face. We spoke about end of life care for parents, right? So we have to have these discussions, and avoiding them doesn't help. But knowing how to work through having these discussions do. So I hope this was helpful. Please bless someone else by sharing this, and thank you guys for joining me. Love you.